In this video, I want to talk about the best book in the Bible for men, in my opinion. Certainly, the Gospels are up there as the best books in the Bible. I agree. I love the Gospels, but I'm talking about a book that will, as a man, as you read it, you realize what you can be, what it's like to be a man. I'm talking about First and Second Samuel, and you could even go into First and Second Kings as well. But I'm really focusing on the story of David and his kingship. That's a story of triumph. It's also a story of obscurity. It's a story of a man who has a lot of valor, a lot of courage, who loves the Lord, and a story of a man who is just a man, who makes a lot of mistakes, who tells lies that get people killed, who takes women into his home that shouldn't be in his home. It's a story of a man who is doing what he could to become the man God asked him to be and stumbling along the way. And it sets an example of what a man can be and also what happens when a man forgets his place. A few years ago, I got a bunch of guys together for a small group to take them through First Samuel, and then I wanted to do Second Samuel, and we were doing another book at the time, and just a regular book, a book called Becoming a King by Morgan Snyder. Fantastic book. Highly recommend it. And we'd read that book, but then we were doing one chapter at a time of First and Second Samuel. And we had this group chat going. Now, when I led this small group, I was actually the youngest guy in the small group. I was 30 at the time, and everybody else in this group was in their 40s. Some of the guys were in their 50s, and I felt really out of place trying to lead this small group for guys, but it ended up being really fruitful as we went through First and Second Samuel. And one chapter a day we would read, and then we had a group chat, and people would, send their messages in there. What did they learn? What did they notice? What questions did they have? And when you read First Samuel, it's all about potential, and David's the man. He is the man. He's the giant killer. He unites the kingdom. He never speaks against Saul. He's a man of character, man of valor. And then you get into Second Samuel, and David's king now, and he does unite the kingdom right in Second Samuel. And then it just kind of seems like David sort of falls apart a little bit. He's a great king, but he also begins to fall apart towards the end of his life. And it seems like as he gets older, he doesn't know how to lead. It's like now that he's at the top, well, what do I do now? Is kind of the feeling that all these guys got. They're all sending these messages like, what happened to the giant killer? And that's one of the great things about reading First and Second Samuel is you get to see this man of what he could be, but you also get to see the limits of a man. All these guys in this small group also said, I wish I would have read this book earlier. I wish I would have known these things as a young man so I could have better prepared myself for the future. Why did nobody ask me to read this? Or why did nobody insist that I read these books? And so I'm here to tell you today, First and Second Samuel, if you're a young man, older man, wherever you are, is one of the best books that you can read in the Bible for men. I'm actually of the opinion that it's the best leadership book ever written. I read First and Second Samuel once, sometimes even twice a year, mark it up and start to notice things about this book that are really pivotal. You learn a lot of lessons from David. You learn how to lead men, but also not to rebel against those who are over you. From David, you learn what it's like to be criticized right before you have a moment of triumph. His brothers come and criticize him and saying, we know your heart, we know who you are. David also knows what it's like to be forgotten and out in the field and not to have his father's appreciation or affection. David also knows what it's like to slay a giant and then to be forgotten as he goes. He goes from slaying a giant and being famous in Israel to playing the harp for the king, a king that doesn't even like him, a king that is extremely jealous of him, a king who throws a spear at him to kill him 3 times. David learns not to throw spears back. He learns not to condemn those in leadership who have been placed in leadership above him. He learns not to speak evil of the Lord's anointed. He learns to submit himself to the leadership while simultaneously dodging the spears that are thrown at him, and how to honor leadership, but also not to follow poor leadership. He knows when to leave and when to stay, when to be faithful and when to go do what he's been asked to do, all with an upright heart. David will teach you in First Samuel how to leave with dignity without speaking evil against those you're leaving. You've quit a job sometimes and you want to speak against everybody who's there and run your mouth against everything that went bad and wrong and evil or whatever it is. And David will teach you not to do that. He'll teach you to leave in silence with your upright character and taking it in the face and letting people say what they need to say while not compromising your character. You learn from David how to lead broken men. David goes and hides in a cave, and it says these 400 men who were broken and in debt and who had no hope, they all come to David, and David tells them, like, hey, you're safe with me. Learn from me. And he takes this group of broken men in a cave and he turns them into the mighty men of Israel, the warriors who would later fight all of Israel's battles and be loyal to David. He took these men who were like himself and he turned them into the mightiest warriors that Israel has ever had. And one of them, his name was Benaiah. My son's name is Benaiah, named after one of David's mighty men. It says that he was a man of valor, a doer of great deeds. And then it says he killed a lion in a pit on a day when the snow had fallen. And I was like, that has to be my son's first name. You'll also learn from David what it takes to reunite kingdoms or your world that has been hopelessly separated. When David becomes king, half the kingdom is like, no, you're an illegitimate king. You are, Saul's our real king and you must have killed him. And half of them follow David, and David has to figure out, how am I going to unite these people so that we can have one kingdom under one king, under one ruler? How am I going to do that? And David manages to do it, and he keeps Israel united up until even all the way through Solomon. You learn from David what it means to bring worship back when it's been lost. And as David brings the Ark of the Covenant back in and he's worshiping and he's loving God, you learn from David, a man who kills giants and armies, what it looks like to worship God in spirit and in truth and with all that you have, that you can be a mighty warrior and you can also be fully dependent on God and you can worship him. You also learn from David what happens when you fail to speak up for justice, especially in your own home. David has a son who does something evil, and David doesn't say anything, and it leads to something worse and worse and worse happening in Israel, from where one of his sons tries to overthrow his entire kingdom. I'm not going to give you the details of the story, but you should read it for yourself so you can understand what happens when you fail to speak up for justice. You can also learn from David what a good woman looks like, because he meets a woman named Abigail who calls him to who he's supposed to be, who uses her words to protect him from making a stupid mistake, and he recognizes the dignity of this woman. You also learn from David what it's like to just be a man. David's got all the potential in the world. He's the king of Israel. Has many, many triumphs, but he's also just a man. And there's part of the story that leaves you wishing there was a better king that could take David's place and be the king that we all want and need. And yet David, he's just a man, just like you and I. We're just men. We have our moments where we have a lot of triumph, but we also we're just men and we have our limits. And those are all things that you can learn and much more from diving into 1st and 2nd Samuel. Like I said, I think this is the best book for men to read over and over and over again. And the first time you read it, you may not get everything out of it, but as you read it, more and more comes to light and how this story is woven together, and it'll speak to you as a man. It'll make you want to become a mighty warrior. It'll make you want to become a man of valor, a man of courage, a man of good presence. It'll also help you realize, I'm just a man in need of a better king than I currently have. I hope this blesses you. Thanks for watching.